Hello, everybody. I am so happy to be back here with you. I'm Jessica DiRuzza, and I am an archetypal astrologer and depth psychotherapist. And I want to come on here today and share with you Venus moving through the 12 houses. I am back after giving birth to my second child, my son Mobius, little baby Moby, my beautiful Aquarian boy. And our family is doing really well and super in love. And I'm also just really grateful to be able to get to share this time and space with each of you. And I really hope that you get valuable insight and grounded inspiration for what's to come through today in this talk. My big announcement is I'm going to be giving a free astrology lecture on the current Saturn Neptune conjunction, and that is going to be on September 21st. It's a Sunday at 1 p.m. Eastern time. And you can go to trustpsyche.com and you register for free by putting in your email, and you will get the link for that talk. I'm really excited. I'm doing it on the day of a solar eclipse, exactly opposite the Saturn Neptune conjunction. It's a potent day, and I decided that's how I wanted to ritualize this eclipse season was by being able to get to share the time and space with you and go into a full spectrum deep dive on the Saturn Neptune conjunction, which is the most significant planetary alignment of our time. So you're all welcome to come, and I hope you do. All right, let's get started. So I want to focus from an archetypal and depth psychological understanding of Venus. And I'm going to be choosing three main components of that planetary archetype and then moving through each house and describing how I understand the embodiment and sacred invocation of Venus in each house. So, the first component I'm going to be focusing on is love and relationship. And when I say relationship, I mean romantic relationship, friendship, familial, any type of relationship that you have in your life. Then the second one is going to be creativity. Um, that is the aspect of the artist, but creativity, capital C. And then the third component is money, something I don't often talk about, but I think does have relevance and value. And so I want to bring in those three dimensions of Venus. So the first house is so much about self expression and embodiment. And when you have Venus in the first house, that is someone who tends to be very likable and charming and kind of gives off this aura of um, sweetness or endearment. You can't help but just kind of be attracted to and love that person. But also, you can think of the first house as the garb that we wear, the way in which we adorn ourselves. And so, Venus in the first house typically is somebody who wants to present themselves in a more refined or kind of curated way. So they really care about how they look, how they dress, how they're presenting themselves. And I think this is really important to take in because what I'm describing here through the houses is the domain or realm of life that this energy is going to come through. And it's important to understand the facets of each house to know what I'm proposing here is this is where we find these three components of Venus. So when you look at the placement of Venus in your natal chart, you are looking at where you find love, how you find connection and relationship, where most of your creativity is being channeled, and where probably you're making money, like how you're making it, the way in which you value that currency and the ability to generate it. So I'm saying that when you look at Venus in your natal chart, you, when asking these questions, how and where do I find love and creativity and money, you look to the house placement. So when I say that the first house kind of radiates charm and beauty, and there's this value in harmonious self expression and appearance, and attracts others easily, usually Venus in the first house placement has so much to do with someone who just kind of naturally, magnetically brings in a partner, a lover, friendship. They tend to have lots of friends, value their friends. Because of that likability, it gives them a social currency that also then plays into not only how they find love by being in their beautified self expression and adornment, but that also the way in which they make money is somehow connected to really being in that beautiful self expression and creativity, and that their appearance plays a direct role um, in making money. And so I know someone who has Venus in the first house who not only sings songs all day long and communicates their love and affection through lyrics. Like they will send you a song or sing you a line from a song. It's a one form of how they express their love, but they also take great pride in what they wear. And so when they would go to work every morning, this man would dress in a very kind of refined sensibility and take great pride in putting on his suit and his tie and going in. And so much of the attention that this Venus in first house placement got was through this person seeking harmony in all their relationships, but also the way in through which they dressed. The way that they attracted their wife was through both how they looked and by the fact that they seemed like the kindest person in the room. They met in college, and what stood out most about this person was that they were the kindest, and that's what drew their mate into them. Okay, Venus in the second house. So the second house is a deep appreciation for sensual pleasures and material beauty. It also values security and comfort. Think Taurus. This is the house traditionally we look to as the house of money, resources, learning to value and love oneself. It's that house placement that so much is the deep initiation into belonging and worth. And so when you have Venus there, usually there's a great pride in being able to generate money yourself, that through your hands and your artistry and your craft of whatever it is that you touch and you make, that through beauty and through creativity is how you want to make your money. But it's also where you find love, romantic and friendship, is by literally creating the things that you love. Okay, maybe you make jewelry that you, through the commerce and the currency of the social trade of making your jewelry or making your clothes, or making your music, is the way in which you find belonging, worth, and connection in your life. And it's also how you make your money. So it's really important when Venus is in the second house that what you love and value the most, especially from that creative aspect, is actually how you want to also make your money. Those two things are deeply connected and interwoven together. When there's a separation between those things, it causes a dissonance, and that loss of harmony is often experienced as agonizing or even kind of like soul killing. And so there's this need to holographically make um, your money and your connection socially, by doing what you love and creating it. Maybe you're a farmer and you need to, do farm to table. Maybe um, you could even be someone who is an investor and wants to generate more money and wealth. But the way that you do that is by also helping and supporting doing that for your relationships and the other people in your life. And so that harmony that you seek through love, creativity, and money is something that is essentially needed in order to weave together the fabric of your community. Okay, Venus in the third house. So the third house is really about sweet communication. Really enjoys connecting through words, through writing, through storytelling. Loves to learn and loves to share. So it's both loving to learn and then sharing that knowledge. And so when Venus is in the third house, typically we find love and friendship through some way of communicating, through your writing, through your words. I know someone who had Venus in the third house that they found their community through poetry reading. I know someone who had Venus in the third house who really found their community and their friends through their blog online, and that really gave them a lot of pleasure. When we're thinking about Venus, we need to really tune into that element of what genuinely brings us pleasure. And by doing those pleasurable things, in this case, Venus in the third house, the pleasure of writing and communicating and storytelling generates more pleasure in our life. And that creative act is what connects us to those people. And then there's also often a need to somehow make money through doing that. So this could be someone who potentially makes money off of sharing their knowledge and information, whether that's online through videos or being a content creator or an influencer, or maybe it's someone more in the local community where the person takes great pride in being able to share, the events that are going on around town and connecting people together locally. I know someone at Venus in the third house that went to all the live music around town and videoed it and then streamed it online, and became the videographer in the local music scene. And that's how they made their friends and experienced great worth and value. So you're hearing here how I'm weaving in all the dimensions of Venus into understanding its native placement and where it most wants to come to life in your life. And by living into that and deepening into that and trusting that that Venus placement in your chart is guiding you into how to have more Venus in your life is exactly what astrology is all about. It's about the courage and the trust to deepen into our charts, that sacred union or conjunctio of the soul and the chart this lifetime, by it being a cosmic guide from source to help you deepen into your authentic truth. Okay, Venus in the fourth house. So Venus in the fourth house finds beauty in the home and with the family and in our emotional roots and interpersonal emotional attachment to the primary figures in our life. It nurtures through affection, touch, physical touch, snuggling, cuddling, um, but it very much is about making the home a beautiful place to be and also a creative place. Usually, you walk into a Venus in the fourth house, and the home itself is gorgeous, beautiful works of art, very well kept. Just the color saturation is gorgeous, but also it's a space where this person really values bringing in people. So they can often be like the hostess with the mostest. And they like to create these cozy spaces. So when you have Venus in the fourth house, usually your love of family and family of origin or chosen family is really where you invest your heart. And through that is really like how you generate the most connection, is creating family in your home, whether that's with your partner, your children, your family of origin, or your chosen family. It's like you want to invest most of your love and your time and your appreciation and affection and your creative acts towards the home and towards the family. But it's also about emotional connection and really getting to have the experience of a lot of love in one's life. And so sometimes this person's money can be inherited wealth, or it can be family money, or that they make their money in some way by taking care of children. You can see this in the aspect of someone who's a caregiver in some kind of way, or maybe is a preschool teacher or runs an in-home daycare, or they make money through how they show up in service to their family. So this is someone where the generation of wealth either is coming from the family, through the family, or towards the family, and the home. This is also could be someone who potentially is like an interior designer, or someone who wants to go in and create more beauty in other people's homes. Okay, Venus in the fifth house. This is a very romantic and playful placement of Venus. It's highly creative, and love is expressed through art and deep passion and also joyful experiences. The fifth house is the house of children and play. And so Venus in the fifth, it's such a sweet, tender-hearted, but very creative placement for Venus. And so the love of children is very strong, but also the love of one's own inner child and one's own playful creations. This is someone socially who's very delightful to hang out with. They tend to make friends easily. And they also are very oriented towards romantic relationship. Look, we're not all built necessarily to be in romantic relationships. That's not for everybody, and that's fine. But the Venus in the fifth house very much is a life path that is focused on having romantic relationship and getting a lot of joy and pleasure through romantic relationship. This is someone also who potentially wants to make money through their art, and or their deepest passions. Not everybody wants to connect making money with their passions. Some people like to keep it separate because they feel that it taints their passions, or they don't want their to get burnt out with their passions or to experience a sense of displeasure. So sometimes that is separated in order to preserve the passion. Well, Venus in the fifth house is someone who wants to live in their passion as much as possible. And so they often feel greatly satisfied when they're sharing their passions with the other people in their life. If they have Venus in the fifth, then maybe they want to co create their work or their art with their partner or their friends, that they really enjoy that dimension of the playful, creative, artistic expression happening in their relationships. Some people want to separate in their romantic relationships their work or their creativity. But Venus in the fifth is someone who definitely could get a lot of enjoyment by that level of co creation and collaboration. Venus in the sixth house, this is someone who really values service and kindness and creating harmony in one's daily life and routines. Um, Beauty is found in both routines, rituals, and helping others. So the sixth house, as the house of service, it shows us that this person's work really needs to be of service, and that often this person finds community and romantic relationship through their service work. So if you have Venus in the sixth and you are wanting to find a partner, oftentimes you do that by deepening into your acts of service and really showing up in your acts of service and meeting that person through you following through on embodying that. It's also someone in that valuing of routines and rituals that usually makes money in a more kind of earth-based, Virgoan, mundane way. So this is someone who maybe has the career of being a nurse or being some kind of caregiver or doing nonprofit work or philanthropic work. And this is not only where they're going to make money, but also find the most meaningful relationships in one's life. Now we're going to rise up into the top half of the chart and we're going to move from the sixth to the seventh. So Venus in the seventh house really seeks balance and loving partnerships. This is very much where relationship is one's greatest mirror, and also where one finds a tremendous amount of self worth, because the seventh house is about partnership and one on one relationship. Of course, it's the house of marriage, but it's all partnership, including business partnership. That Venus in the seventh is more than any other placement really seeking to value and prioritize one-on-one relationships and partnerships of all kind, and knowing that this is where this person really gets their sense of meaning and of worth. And it definitely is the placement where um, romantic partnership usually is a high ideal, um, but it also can be business. And so the word collaboration is very important here because probably out of all the houses, it's the one that's most focused on collaborative work. And So if you're doing it as a lone wolf, then that piece is very much missing. Okay, Venus in the eighth house. This is a really intense, magnetic, and passionate placement. Love involves transformative depths and definitely a shared vulnerability on all levels, emotionally, spiritually, psychologically, and sexually. Venus in the eighth is someone who very much through relationship goes through a deep dive into the underworld and the unconscious in order to be transformed and evolve and to come back out on top, renewed in the idea of, you can think here of Anana or Persephone and Demeter. That is the level of passion and intensity of transformation that we're talking about through the death rebirth process. And so, this is also someone who tends to very much value sexual connection and that one-on-one intimacy through vulnerability. Vulnerability in love is their compass to the connection that they're seeking. And so the more vulnerable this person can be in a relationship, the more bonded they become with that person. This is also where they find their creative work, is through emotional, psychological, and spiritual vulnerability. The vulnerability itself is a creative act, and the generation of money and wealth can either be through other people's resources. I know someone has Venus in the eighth where they made a lot of their money through their partner's work. I know someone else who has Venus in the eighth who made a lot of their money from an inheritance. I know another person who has Venus in the eighth whose family invests and supports in them. I know someone else who has Venus in the eighth where a lot of their wealth or their resources was through um, the most intimate relationships in their life. At one point, that was their mother. At another point, that was their sister. At another point, that was their husband. So it really much is about that depth of intimate connection and how much that's both creative, but also generates resources. Okay, Venus in the ninth. Now we're moving towards the top of the chart near the midheaven. And this is a placement where love is an adventure. And it's something that is very excitable and a process of discovery. It's a love of philosophy and culture, worldview, spirituality, cosmology. And so this placement finds beauty and love in wisdom, in the wisdom traditions and the esoteric traditions, but also through travel and really big ideas. So, metaphysics and philosophy. Venus in the ninth is where you find love through pursuing higher education. Maybe you fell in love in college or graduate school, or through a process of getting certified in something. Venus in the ninth is where you fall in love traveling abroad. Maybe you're international lovers, you come from different cultures. Because of the love of different cultures, this person often finds love and friendship with people from all around the world. There's such a diversity of friendship for Venus in the ninth house, but also the relationships are grounded in a shared philosophy, worldview, cosmology, and metaphysics. This is essential to this placement. The generation of of money usually comes from work that is involved in some way with education. So that could be someone who makes money through teaching. That could be someone who makes money through research and scholarship, through traveling. This is someone who maybe teaches languages. So it very much is the way in which money is made is in a ninth house way that honors everything ninth house: adventure, culture, philosophy, wisdom, big ideas, higher education. So, in part, too, we can look at, and this is fitting for the ninth and the 10th house, when we're looking at career or vocation, and someone has a question around this, we can obviously look to those houses, but we can also look to Venus and say, I wonder what this person loves, or I wonder how this person might be well suited to make money. Okay, now we're going across the midheaven to Venus in the 10th house. This very much is a desire to be seen as successful and graceful in one's work and contributions to the public. This is someone who naturally attracts admiration in the public or professional life. So they have a certain charm in their professional life. Usually, they do very well professionally, and their work is something that they love. Sometimes they're even married to their work. So you can see Venus in the 10th house, where someone has often prioritize their career sometimes over other relationships, but it's also very much at work is how they make their friends, or that's also how they find their partner or partners. So the 10th house is someone who literally goes to work and finds love and relationship of all kind. But I think it's also important to recognize here that there is a sense of pride that goes into wanting to be seen in a Venusian way in the public and professional arena. And that is something that this person strives for and makes decisions on a certain level to get a certain level of admiration. And when that's missing, usually that person feels either like they're not doing enough or they're failing or there's a kind of like a hole or a gap in their life. So when we look to Venus in the chart, we're looking at like where does that person what's that person's love language? How do they want to be loved? How do they want to be perceived and admired? But also like where do they want to really kind of have their heart be most invested? All right, Venus in the 11th house very much is a love of community and friendship. It's the house of friendship and shared ideals. This is really important because it very much is about living one's ideals. And it's attracted usually to a very visionary community that's progressive in some way, or eccentric, or avant garde, or counterculture. These are all great 11th house words. So there's definitely a sense of unconventional connections and unconventional relationships. Venus in the 11th house really is striving for social freedom and social progression. And they usually find friendship in community, in groups. It's the house of groups. Usually it's a love of being in group and having a social charm in community. They can be community lovers, community leaders in lots of different communities, and usually they make money through their social networks and investing themselves into something that is visionary and in service to the collective, but usually in some kind of unconventional, again, eccentric way. Also, there tends to be an idealism around how money is made. So, this placement usually strives to make their money in a way that is very much congruent with their societal values or what they see as being most important for humanity. All right, lastly, we're in the 12th house. This is a very romantic and soulful placement of Venus. In a way, it's very like a transcendent way of loving that's striving for the experience of unconditional love, both in giving and receiving that. I think the word unconditional is very important for 12th house placements. Um, I think, it reminds me of that Rumi quote that there's a field, out there beyond wrongdoing and right doing, and I'll meet you there. That's a very 12th house sentiment. So when Venus is there, it really is about getting to learn to how to have the experience of unconditional love. And so love is very spiritual, but it's also very karmic. And in a way, it can be hidden. There's something about the 12th house that is veiled and mysterious. So sometimes Venus in that placement needs a certain level of solitude and reflection and contemplation in their relationships to be able to kind of process the level of sensitivity and empathy that they bring to their relationships. This placement is one that deserves a lot of kind of relational protection because of the sensitivity and empathy that's there. And so that's part of the idea that needing that more time to process what's going on in relationship is essential to the health and well-being of that placement. But I also think we're here. We're really underlying the importance of having the relationships. It's a tendency to be in a lot of karmic relationships and to value spending one's time there, kind of more than anywhere else, but also that those relationships need to be soulful in order for there to be the connection and the meaning. This is someone where maybe they find community, friendship, and love through going into communities that are more contemplative. So, this would be someone where they go into a community of meditators or yogis, practitioners, someone that is in the healing arts and finds love and friendship in communities that focus on healing of some kind. This could be, again, acupuncture, yoga, meditation, but it also could be someone that finds love and relationship um, where there is a deep honoring of the mystery and kind of living in a way that centers and prioritizes um, existing in more quiet, reflective places and spaces. Um, so sometimes there might not be a lot of talking with this placement. The connection might be um, less verbal and more based on just energy. I don't know how quite to describe it, but it also can have this tendency for the relationships to have some kind of psychic or energetic way of being together. Sometimes this person is called to professions of the healing arts in that placement, and that sometimes, and I'll end with this, that placement can be challenged in making money because there is such a sense of living in some kind of spiritual way. And I want to honor that, but I also want to say that that placement also deserves to be taken care of. Um, yeah, so sending love to all the Venus and 12th house folks. All right, so that is my take on Venus through the 12 houses of the zodiac. I hope that you got some insight or clarity to your Venus placement or the Venus placements of those in your life. I think this is really how we learn to show up and love and take better care of one another when we can look at each other's charts and get a deeper understanding of what in this case brings more love, connection, creativity, and money into our lives. Thank you so much for being here with me. I'd love for you to like this video, subscribe to my channel, and leave a comment. I always respond. And I really hope you do come join me on September 21st for the solar eclipse talk on the current Saturn Neptune conjunction. It's always a pleasure and always an honor to be here with you. Let's rattle it out, y'all. Here we go. And I want to conclude with this, which is my husband, Travis DiRuzza, is giving archetypal astrology readings and counseling. He is doing a phenomenal job and he's working with all different kinds of folks. He's specializing in working with men and masculinity, fathers and husbands. He's also working with couples and really enjoying that and helping people in their work with medicine. So you are welcome to contact him at travis@trustpsyche.com if you have any questions or you'd like to do a session. It's a really, I think, potent time astrologically to really understand what's going on for you, especially with the current Saturn Neptune conjunction. All right. Thank you so much, everybody. Sending you love and sending you blessings. Bye for now.